Hello, sixth grade. Let's talk about something called limitations. I'm going to keep this kind of short, so hopefully you don't have to speed up the video. Also, don't speed up the video because this is actually kind of a hard topic to grasp. Once you get it, you'll get it, but learning it is kind of tough for some sixth graders. So, limitations. Limitations are possible errors or things that could have made your results, your data, inaccurate. So like incorrect or like not as exact as you want them to be, want your data to be, okay? So for example, let's take this scenario. Our testable question here is what would happen if we increase the amount of water that the plant receives? Let's say we are testing, we have these rulers here, maybe we are testing the amount of plant growth. So when we increase the water that each plant gets, maybe the plant will grow more. That's a potential hypothesis. If we increase the amount of water that the plant receives, then the plant will grow more. That's a good hypothesis, okay? So in order to test this out correctly, we need to keep everything the same, except the amount of water that the plant receives, okay? So let's say this plant gets 100 milliliters of water per day. Maybe this plant gets 200 milliliters of water per day, and this plant gets 400 milliliters of water per day. Okay, these are the same exact plants. They are the same exact pot. Okay, of course you're not going to be able to get to like the exact plant. Like you can't do an experiment on one plant only, then your data is not going to be correct anyway. So these are the same species of plant, they're the same age, etc., etc. Okay, so in this scenario we would have zero limitations. Okay, everything is perfect, and the only thing that we change is the amount of water that each plant receives. And then we're going to sit back and we're going to take our data and see how tall the plant is growing. All right. Now I'm going to add in a limitation. What happens if, let's say, little Timmy is watering this plant. Little Timmy is also watering this plant, but little Tommy, I don't know her name. Tommy sounds good. Little Tommy is watering this plant. Now, there's more than one thing that's different now, okay? So Timmy is watering these two plants, and maybe Timmy's water is exactly 100 milliliters and 200 milliliters, okay? However, let's say that little Tommy over here, her watering is just like a little bit too big. Or maybe Tommy sings to the plant while she's watering it, okay? This is a limitation. How do we know that little Tommy singing to the plant doesn't make it grow faster? How do we know that it's the water and not Tommy singing to the plant? We don't know. That's a limitation. That is something that could make your data inaccurate. It could make your data wrong. It gives us some doubt. Like, is it actually the water or was it her singing? We don't know. So that's a limitation of the experiment. All right, let's move on to a different example. All right, in this example, our testable question is, what would happen if we increase the amount of vinegar in the mixture? All right, so we are measuring maybe the height of the explosion with the ruler here. We have a flask in each trial, 1, 2, 3, and we are increasing the amount of vinegar, like maybe 1 bottle of vinegar, 2 bottles of vinegar, and 3 bottles of vinegar. Now, just looking at this experiment setup, what would be the limitation here? Answer that question. Okay, hopefully you pointed out that this flask being different is going to be the limitation of this experiment, okay? It could cause our data to be inaccurate. It is a lot bigger and a very different shape than the other two flasks. We need this flask to be the same. All right, we need another one of this flask over here so that everything can be the same, so that we know that the amount of vinegar is what is giving us our data, not this weird flask. Okay, we do not want this weird flask in here. Maybe this weird flask has special powers and I don't know, it's making the experiment like weird or something. I don't know. It's something that it needs to stay the same. All right? We need to be able to say, oh, it was definitely the amount of vinegar that was giving us our data, not this random flask in the middle that was giving us our data. Let's move on to a different example. Okay? What would be the limitations here? We have a testable question. Which food is best for scoring more points in basketball? So we have the same player here, and we have 3 different games. We have apples, and then she eats apples, cookies, and broccoli before each game. Look carefully. What limitations can you find in this experiment setup? Okay, let's talk about it. So we have our pregame snack, which is the foods. We're testing out which food is best, okay? So we're going to switch out the food and see which one's best. In which game does she score the most points? And then maybe later on in the season, she can keep like eating that food. She can keep eating apples if they make her score the best, if they make her score the most points. Why wouldn't she eat the apple like before every game, you know? However, if you look, okay, we have the same amount, 2 apples, 2 cookies, 2 like pieces of broccoli. That's good. That's okay. We're wearing the same thing. It's the same player. That's okay. However, look at the games. Tuesday game, Tuesday game, Tuesday game. That's fine. Okay. Maybe she has a set schedule on Tuesday, so she has about the same amount of stress. That stress can affect your performance in basketball, okay? If you're worried about a test result, you might not play very well, all right? 5:30 p.m., 2:30 p.m., 4:30 p.m. That is a limitation, okay? Playing at 5:30 p.m., 2:30 p.m., and 4:30 p.m. are all different times. This is a limitation because how do we know that maybe she ends up scoring the most amount of points in this game right here, not because it's cookies, but because it's earlier in the day. Maybe she's less tired, and so she's scoring more points when she's less tired at 2:30 p.m. So it might not be the cookies. We don't know. It could be the cookies, all right? But it could not be the cookies. That's why it's a limitation. We have to keep everything the same. So ideally, all of these times would be the same. Maybe 5:30 p.m., 5:30 p.m., 5:30 p.m. Now, there was actually another limitation. And if you know anything about sports, you will know why this is actually a huge limitation. All right? I would never do this experiment because of this one limitation. Sunset Park Prep versus MS 442 versus MS 51 versus MS 88. What if one of these teams is really good? What if she scores the most amount of points versus MS 442 just because they kind of suck at defense? We don't know if it was the apples. We want to see if it was the apples, not the other team being bad at defense. That's a limitation. We want to make sure that we are limiting like what can go wrong. We want to make sure that it's the pregame snack that's making her good at basketball and not anything else. All right, so that's a big limitation. Did I have any more? Yes. What are these limitations? You can read for yourself. All right, testable question. How does the type of music affect the spider's web design? Right off the bat, let's go quickly here. Right off the bat, this spider is on a different shelf. We need to move this little spider down here. Okay? This, no good. What if this second shelf design gets a weirder, I don't know, weirder design. Just like automatically, just because it's on the second shelf and it's higher up. Also, the volume is 25% in this one. This needs to be 50%. All right, because we're changing the type of music. How does the type of music affect a spider's web design? So we have to change the type of music and nothing else. Okay? Nothing else can be different. The volume has to be the same. The position of the spider has to be the same. The radio, or like okay, this is called a boombox. Okay, the boombox is the same. The cabinet is the same. All right, the amount of sunlight has to be the same. The the amount of time that we expose the spider to the music, that has to be the same. All right, maybe we want to play the same song over and over and over again in all three of these genres. So we only use one rap song. We only use one K-pop song. All right, we want to make sure that we have close to zero limitations. Of course, there will always be limitations. Mr. Kotang and I, or whoever your science teachers in the future, if you say, oh, there were no limitations, suspicious. Suspicious. There are always limitations. There are always stuff that you could have either done better, measured better, you could have planned better. Maybe you end up doing the experiment. Maybe you end up collecting data on different days. That is affecting your data. Maybe it's hot one day and cold the next day. That's going to affect your data with whatever you're doing. All right? So hopefully this helped you with limitations. I am approaching 12 minutes. So you can move on to whatever you are doing next.